This Cold War aircraft is one of the fastest aircraft ever built, despite its cartoonish appearance and the fact that it was outdated before its maiden flight. The XB-70 Valkyrie was a technical wonder and a Cold War arms race product. Although this Delta Wing aircraft was a remarkable engineering achievement, only 2 prototypes were ever completed. One of them is on exhibit at the National Museum of the United States Air Force, and we'll tell you all about it in today's video. The Dodge hostile aircraft, it was widely believed that aircraft had to fly higher and faster at the start of the Cold War. It was assumed that you'd be invincible if you could outrun them and soar higher. The Valkyrie is inspired by an age in aviation when bizarre designs not only got it off the drawing board, but also into production. The Air Force desired a jet that blended the payload of the then new B-52 Stratofortress with the B-58 Hustler's supersonic speed. The XB-70, which was eventually renamed the Valkyrie after an Air Force competition, was North American Aviation's proposal. Again, the designers pushed the boundaries of technology to construct an aircraft that could fly higher and faster than any other plane of its size. The XB-70 Valkyrie was named after Norse mythology, which not many people are aware of. If this boomer wasn't already awesome enough, it has a fantastic name. In Norse mythology, she is known as the Valkyrie. The Valkyrie were feminine warriors who had the power to determine who would survive and perish in battle. They would choose those who would perish in battle and transport them to Valhalla's afterlife hall of the fallen. Ragnarok would be prepared by the Valkyrie. They would also figure as the partners of heroes and were often referred to as royalty's daughters. They were occasionally seen with horses and swans, and they were sometimes seen with ravens. Isn't that amazing? XB-70 Valkyrie. At Mach 3, you can travel around 3,000 feet per second. That's more than a half mile. You're also 2 times higher than the average aircraft at 70,000 feet. Only a few aircraft have accomplished both feats, and even fewer have been able to cruise at both speeds for several thousand kilometers. Even so, such remarkable figures, however, were not enough to salvage the XB-70. Despite having high-end features and specs for the period, the plane was later declared outdated and retired owing to rapidly rising operating expenses. The majority were covert surveillance planes or interceptors with an engine in a cockpit. The XB-70 Valkyrie, a massive tactical bomber capable of carrying thousands of pounds of nuclear warheads at supersonic speeds, was neither. It took to the skies for the first time in 1964, outrunning practically all other aircraft before or subsequently. It was also one of the biggest and heaviest planes ever built, and it was antiquated even before it flew. The XB-70 was 196 feet long, 31 feet tall at the tail, and weighed 521,000 pounds at its maximum gross weight. 6 General Electric J93 GE3 turbo engines were fitted inside the bomber's broad, flat fuselage, allowing it to fly at 2,000 miles per hour at a height of 72,000 feet. The XB-70 was built to fly high and fast, outrunning enemy ground air defenses to strike targets all throughout the Soviet Union. Unfortunately, improvements in Soviet air defenses rendered the XB-70's flight profile outdated, and the Pentagon found that a new land-based ICBM could hit targets far more rapidly and inexpensively. The XB-70 was also seen as a costly aircraft, with each production bomber costing an estimated $24.5 million, or $237 million today. As a result, the XB-70 was canceled twice, once by President Eisenhower in 1959 and again by President John F. Kennedy in 1961. Meanwhile, Air Force and North American engineers tried to find a method to keep the plane alive in a different way. A revolutionary jet with a completely pressurized cabin, ample internal space, and the potential to travel at Mach 3 should be useful for something, right? One of the most common post-military applications for the XB-70 was at the first stage of a space launching system. The Valkyrie would fly to altitudes of up to 72,000 feet, eliminating the need for any rocket-based propulsion. According to some plans, it might be used as a high-speed orbital launch platform, a mothership for other planes, or even a supersonic transport. It would transport roughly the same number of passengers as the Concorde while being nearly twice as fast, with a range of 80 to 107 passengers at a range of 4,000 miles. The Air Force's projected X-20 dinosaur manned spaceplanes, spy satellites, and even the Gemini space capsule were among the options on the list. The latter was supposed to be launched through an internal payload compartment, but the plan was flawed since the XB-70 was still in Earth's atmosphere at 72,000 feet. Another suggestion was to use the XB-70 as a hypersonic launch vehicle. The XB-70 was intended to serve as a launch system for the North American X-15 spaceplane, a manned rocket-powered aircraft capable of speeds of Mach 6.7. The bomber speed, launched from an XB-70 mothership at Mach 3, would have considerably boosted the X-15. Utilizing a quicker launch plane could not have propelled the X-15 any faster, and using the pricey X-bomber would have been a waste of money. The XB-70 was also marketed as a companion to the technology that rendered it obsolete, the ballistic missile. The Valkyrie was designed to carry one massive Minuteman II ICBM or two smaller Skybolt missiles in an internal weapons bay. In theory, this would have offered the Air Force more flexibility in a wartime situation, allowing it to fire an ICBM against the Soviet Union from an unexpected direction. However, it was prohibitively costly to launch just one or two missiles. Finally, engineers attempted to market the XB-70 in the most bizarre configuration possible, as a military airliner or an ambulance. The Valkyrie would have been the most costly people mover ever put into duty, so none of these designs passed the cost-to-utility ratio. In the end, there was no alternative mission suited for the groundbreaking XB-70 because of the plane's exorbitant cost. Nearly every other mission has become too expensive. The Valkyrie's rival. The danger of any aircraft did not, in the end, bring the XB-70 program to a halt. By the time the Valkyrie made its first flight in 1964, the Soviet Union had spent 7 years developing the S-75 Dvina surface-to-air missile system. It outperformed the XB-70 in terms of speed and altitude. Even at home, an increasing number of military leaders realized that intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, were the way of the future, rather than long-haul manned bombers. Although the first wave of Titan and Atlas missiles had serious flaws as nuclear deterrents, the replacements were far better. Both the Titan II and Atlas were already well on their way to becoming reliable launch vehicles for both military and commercial usage by the time the XB-70 flew. It was canceled twice, as stated earlier in the video. President John F. Kennedy canceled the program as a defense project in 1961, but it was not the end of the Valkyrie. NASA sought a big supersonic plane to test concepts for a prospective American supersonic transport that might compete with the Concorde and the Soviet Tu-144. The space agency put the first XB-70 to test and assisted North America in improving the second plane, which was more stable and competent at higher speeds. The information gathered was important, albeit it was ironically utilized to aid in the cancellation of the American SST program. The second Valkyrie was in charge of most of the Mach 3 battles, but it was tragically destroyed in mid-flight. The more advanced YF-12 and SR-71 considerably outperformed the original XB-70 by the late 1960s, and both were far more effective as research aircraft. Its utility was further diminished by the loss of the second, more capable XB-70. The first and only XB-70 performed its final flight on February 4, 1969. It had flown just over 160 hours, with just a small portion of that time spent at its much lauded peak speed. It flew from Edwards Air Force Base in California to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, where it was hauled on public highways to the National Museum of the United States Air Force, where it is now. Despite never launching a weapon in anger and barely being in service for 5 years, the Valkyrie foreshadowed future aircraft design. In their bids for an American supersonic transport, a number of firms replicated or were influenced by the XB-70. The B-1 Lancer, produced by then North American Rockwell, has echoes of the Valkyrie's design. So, how do you feel about the XB-70? Do you believe it was a squandered opportunity, or that it was unavoidable? Let us know what you think in the comment section below.